I'm Angela Haythorpe, and I lead the San Jose, California location of Youth with a Mission, also known as YWAM. YWAM is a global missions movement that began in 1960 with the vision to see young people released into the Great Commission. The overall mission being to know God and make Him known. This came from the command that Jesus gave His disciples when His very first words to them were, "Come and follow me," and His very last words to them were, "Go and preach the good news to all creation." So in YWAM, one of the ways we do this is we have a 6-month program called the Discipleship Training School, also known as the DTS. The first half we spend learning more about God through subjects like hearing the voice of God, biblical worldview, and Father Heart of God. During the second half, we go on a field assignment, which we call Outreach, where we engage locally across the San Francisco Bay Area and go on a cross-cultural overseas experience. In both placements, the students are exercising their growing faith muscles as they step out of their comfort zones, and they encourage and empower ministries that are on the ground and get to share about the love of Jesus, not only in word, but in action. So here's a recent story from a student.
So back in September, we spent about 2 weeks in Yosemite. And one of the practices we did while there was to have our personal testimony and be able to share it in about 3 to 5 minutes to an intended audience. So I figured out my intended audience, got my testimony all written out, and I felt pretty confident about it. I'm not one who likes public speaking, so I really need to have it written out what I'm going to say. We gathered around the campfire later that evening to share our testimonies, and I felt my stomach do this really weird knot up thing, and my heart started racing really fast. I knew in previous times when I had that feeling, it meant that God was about to shake some things up. So the Holy Spirit was just giving me this sense that I was not supposed to share my planned out testimony that I had taken hours to work on, but instead I was supposed to come up with a whole new version of my testimony to a whole new intended audience. Of course, that made me really nervous, and it's not good when I get nervous because I never know what will come out of my mouth. But I just took a deep breath, and when it was my time to share, I'm really glad that I just opened my mouth and allowed the Holy Spirit to speak for me. With every word I spoke, God told me that this specific message, this version of my testimony, was exactly what He was looking for me to say. The specific message that He was speaking to me to share was to always work for your own faith and never borrow anyone else's. Growing up, I spent a lot of time using my parents' faith when I should have been growing my own. It is never too early to start taking your faith more seriously, but it can be too late. So next time you go to share a piece of your testimony with maybe a neighbor or a coworker and think you know what you're going to say, just remember to follow the Spirit's leading, even if it makes you feel uncomfortable. God may not want you to have your story all planned out with a perfect speech to give. Instead, He just wants you to bare your heart and allow the Spirit to lead.